morning and welcome to Cowboy Politics with Tommy Welchman on this, the 14th day of July in the year of our Lord 2023. Man, do we have a loaded show for you today, folks. We're going to talk about a little bit about our podcast from yesterday where I called out the trans groomers and twerkers and all the nasty events they do for children. And man, did I receive some fiery backlash from the left. And of course, those who advocate for the trans community and the sexualizing of our children, you know, from the ages of like 4 years old and up, it became very apparent that they did not like being called out on these issues. And like anyone with strong convictions, it only encourages me to continue to move forward and expose both the mental illness behind being trans, as well as their desire to trans the kids and sexually objectify all of them. So we're also going to talk about how Biden's Justice Department all of a sudden decides to scrub child sex trafficking from sections of their website, effectively downgrading the very public and well-known issue that the movie The Sound of Freedom is bringing to the big screen right now. Finally, we're also going to discuss a little bit about why Biden had to call up the military reserve units on Wednesday and deploy them to active duty in Europe just a week ago today. We discussed these issues on this show surrounding our dwindling military forces. And apparently I'm a pretty good prognosticator because it only took 7 days for the inept, incapable, pathetic man sitting in the White House who calls himself president to have to activate our military reservists. We're getting into all of that and more, folks. Should just sit back, buckle up, and get ready for another bumpy ride, my friends. This is Cowboy Politics, and I'm Tommy Welchman. Well, welcome back to the show, folks. Yesterday's podcast concerning the mental illness, I would say, that trans people are suffering from, as well as their attempts to sexualize our children, using things such as, drag stream story hour, drag queen events for kids, public drag queen events in restaurants, diners, elementary schools, and, basically any other area where children congregate, was extremely successful. Got a lot of traction on social media, and of course, the firestorm and backlash against me and that reporting immediately came under fire. As you may have guessed, that is not a deterrent for me. In fact, it does nothing but further invigorate me. It does. It invigorates me. It's like drinking energy drinks, like 10 of them. And I just feel that passion to keep moving forward and to bring you the truth about this disgusting and socially transmitted disease of transgenderism and that mental disorder of gender dysphoria and autogynephilia that go with it. Now, of course, some of these transsexual people watch the podcast, and their opinion was the videos were nothing but, good art. Yeah, it was art. These are the trans people teaching the children about dance. That's what it was, yep. Some folks stated that there were no such things as classifications that we find in the medical guide, such as gender dysphoria and autogynephilia, right? Others went on to say things that they're not trying to trans the kids at all. No, not doing that. Nope. And by the way, I didn't know this. You probably didn't know this, but there's no video evidence of any kind of, trans people sexualizing or grooming our children. It's all lies. Yeah. Yep. They actually had the gall to email me and put me in messages with that and post some of that stuff on my Twitter page. Like, are you kidding me? Like I mentioned in yesterday's podcast, to agree with that, to agree with there being no evidence, right? You would have to basically tell your eyes they didn't see what they saw and your ears they didn't just hear what they heard. You'd have to tell your TV it was playing videos that don't exist, and you'd have to tell the social media sites quite the same, that the videos they're playing don't really exist and that they're all fabricated. Basically, to believe that nonsense, you'd have to bury your head in the sand and pretend the entire Pride Month of June does not exist. Because if it did, right? If Pride Month existed, you may see plenty of images of drag queens sexualizing our children and trying to queer the schools and queer the kids. And you'd see all the Pride celebrations in elementary schools. If it existed, you'd have seen all the parades and the naked people on bicycles and the naked people walking up and down the streets and the trans people, twerking and jerking their junk in front of children of young age, ages as young as what? Young ages, I say, 3 years old. Some of those videos I played for you yesterday had 1-year-olds in it, little toddlers, could barely stand. If Pride Month did exist, you would have to admit that you saw these tremendous, monstrous, hours-long parades. And you saw them in all of our big cities with scantily dressed transvestites walking around whipping one another, wearing sexual black leather garb. And then you'd have to admit that you saw people engaging in things like puppy play. Yeah, get your puke bag. And of course, we can't forget the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence out in California, right? Mocking all of Christianity, dancing and gyrating on a stage, making a sex scene at the foot of the cross and sexualizing Jesus Christ. Once again, right? Performing in front of children as well as adults. And if Pride Month did exist, you'd have to admit that you heard all the commentary of all the trans people trying to trans the world, who think the trans movement hasn't gone far enough, who openly speak about being proud to have tens of thousands of teachers in our elementary schools, who also comment that that number is still not quite enough, that we need more trans teachers in our elementary schools and more penetration into the very minds of our children, that we need to normalize trans behavior, and that we need to start at a very young age, right? However, that's not what the people who got involved in this whole backlash thing against me said to me yesterday's podcast. And I'll tell you, I stirred up such a firestorm, and the responses were evidence of it. I assure you, many of those who responded to me were quite blind to all of those recent events and so vociferously denied their very existence. As if we all didn't just see Pride Month. Are you kidding? Anyway, so in an effort to bring out the truth again, I grabbed a few more videos, just a few, to share with you about this exact thing. The transgender community and drag queens provocatively dancing and gyrating in front of children, effectively working to trans the kids and to normalize this behavior. Not only to make it commonplace, but incredibly, to make it acceptable, especially those who don't possess the faculties or the emotional intellectuality to refute such offers, to both the perversion as well as the outright invitation into their insane world. Because, folks, fact of the matter is, these children do not have possession of those faculties. They don't. They cannot discern good from evil, right from wrong. They can't discern that. They wouldn't know the difference between a crazy person or a sane person just based on behavior. They don't know. And you know what? That says a whole lot for where this trans movement is going. Why do you think they want to be in front of the children? That's what this is all about. Get them in front of the kids. Get them in front of the kids. Get them in front of the kids. What public event can we do? What restaurant can we perform in? We're going to talk about all of that. And for the record, I want you to know exactly where I stand and exactly what my position is with regard to that trans community and with you. You see, the trans community can scream, flail, yell, scream, whatever, until they're blue in the face. I don't care. All they're trying to do is invite me to join them in their insanity. And that's just something I refuse to do. I do not and will not ever believe that a man can become a woman or a woman become a man. You could try to sell it to me, negotiate with me. You could try to convince me, present whatever bogus evidence you would like to present. You will not change my mind, nor, I venture to say, will you change the minds of hundreds of millions of other Americans who are not mentally ill or susceptible to such deception. I will not be joining you in your world of make-believe, your world of insanity. And it's not my responsibility to join you in that make-believe world. And I'm under no obligation to do so. Likewise, the trans community and all these drag queens can yell and scream at the top of their lungs, telling me how appropriate it is to dance and gyrate sexually in front of our children. And I will never, ever, under any circumstances, agree with that. They can do as they did yesterday, right? Try to convince me that it's some kind of dance or art, or it's their lived experience, whatever that nonsense means, and that we have to accept it, right? And them the way they are. And my friends, that is a lie from the very pit of hell. We do not have to accept it. And that is going to lead me into another very contentious and somewhat debated position of judging others. And yes, we're going to touch on that nuclear topic right now. All right. I know this is a loaded one, guys, and there's a lot to go over today, but this is one of those things, just it has to be said. It absolutely has to be said. A lot of people are constantly talking about, whether they know it or not, the book of Matthew, verses 1 through 3, right? Matthew 7, verses 1 through 3. That we should not judge lest we be judged, right? And it goes on to say, for with what judgment ye shall judge, ye shall be judged, and with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured unto you. And why do you behold the log in your brother's eye, but you don't consider the log in your own? Right? That's what it says. And just like John 3:16, this is one of the most misquoted, mistaught, misunderstood verses of the Bible. And I have news for you folks. We judge every day. And this verse is not about judging people for their behavior or their actions. It's much more about judging people for whether or not they are members of the invisible church, whether or not they are sanctified or not, and whether they are or they are not eligible for salvation. That's what the judging is about. It's not about making judgments about that person. Now, those things, judging, whether or not someone is or isn't saved or can be or can't be or ever will be redeemed, those are the things that we should not do because we're not God. And we can't judge the eternal destination of anyone. However, we do make judgments every day about who we like and who we don't, who we're going to spend time with and who we're not, what kinds of activities we'll allow ourselves to engage in, and with which ones we're going to refuse. And that's just a few of the judgments we're to make every day. So to judge someone who is doing wrong, and then for you to not do wrong, is not only making a judgment about that person, you're making a judgment about yourself and how you will or will not respond or behave in light of that external stimulus. For instance, like let's just give a for instance, right? One of the most pervasive sins taking place today is addiction to pornography. It is. And maybe that makes you cringe and maybe it doesn't. Now, maybe some of you listening may suffer from that. Maybe some of you don't. And for the most part, the majority of us know that engaging in viewing of pornography is wrong. It's just wrong. We know if you were to walk into your office at work and you walked up behind someone and you saw their computer screen, right? And you saw some pornography, flat out just sex pornography on there, right? You would what? Immediately form a judgment, maybe? Yeah, you would, and you'd be right to do so. And you may, like I would, be somewhat offended. Now, depending how you are, you may judge that you should say something individually to that person, that you should approach them and just tell them, look, guys, that's inappropriate. Not just at work, but it's inappropriate for your life. Maybe you're one of those people that just takes it right to them. That's typically my first step. If I see somebody engaged in open, blatant, outright sin, and don't confuse that word and don't like shut the podcast off because you're like, oh God, he's preaching to us. Look, you could just take the word sin and also, equate it equally to wrong. Just wrong. I'll approach that person and I'll talk to him about it. Others of you may judge that is so horrific and such a huge sin or so wrong, especially in public, that you should immediately report that to human resources. Immediately. And just let them deal with it. Maybe that guy gets fired on the spot, maybe he doesn't. But that's a judgment you're going to make. Either way you handle that, you have made a judgment about the behavior of someone else. And that's not only perfectly normal, but the Bible does call for us to avoid sin. It does. And to do that, right, we have to recognize that it's sin, and then we're supposed to confront them, like I just said. And if you follow scripture, then the sinner's to be disciplined. He goes through his discipline and then welcome back into fellowship once they have repented, right? Which means turned in the other direction from that sin. So it's not about excommunication. It's about discipline and then welcoming them back into the family. Kind of like we do to our kids. We confront them. We discipline them. Yeah, maybe they go through an uncomfortable period. Maybe they suffer a little punishment. It's okay. And then what? We tell them we love them, right? And that we're doing this for their benefit. We're supposed to do that to adults who sin too. But don't throw another adult over your knee and give them a spanking. That might draw some attention to you in the situation you don't want. But you see, in today's world, we've got these bunch of non-educated yahoos walking around constantly saying that we're not to judge others. And unfortunately, so much of our populace is uneducated as to what the scripture really means, so as to know that we are absolutely to judge others. And we were absolutely to make judgments about ourselves and our response to every single time we're challenged with committing sin or engaging in it or what's wrong, right? We're simply not to do is judge whether or not someone's accounted for among the redeemed. That's it. That's not our job. That's where we would be going wrong, right? So with that in mind, folks, I want you to feel comfortable. I want you to feel comfortable judging that transgenderism is wrong. Sexualizing our children is wrong. Grooming our children for sex is wrong. Child sexual exploitation is wrong. Gyrating sexually in public and with anyone other than your spouse is wrong. Judge freely and judge rightly. And just do not allow yourself to be misled by those who most likely know no more about this than the wiring diagram on the space shuttle. As a people, we are to judge others and to judge their behavior. And then to decide whether or not we are going to participate or not participate in that. That's perfectly fine. Just don't judge their eternal destination. You can't do that. And that's what it means. So feel comfortable judging that transsexualism is wrong in every way. So anyway, with that said, we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about a few more videos. Some more of that evidence left that your eyes didn't see and your ears didn't hear, right? Of the trans and the drag queens and the Pride movement going after our children on a sexual level and grooming them to find sexual perversion as a normalized everyday occurrence. So this first video I'm going to share with you was from back in October. Actually, it was October 22nd, and it was a pretty explicit video that took place in Texas at a drag queen show, right? And it was performed in front of a little girl. Now, you'll see you won't see her face. You'll see where she's standing. She's somewhat behind the man that is performing and behaving like a perverted woman, right? But her face is blurred out, thank God. And towards the end, again, you'll see this little girl. You'll see her, like, her eyes are going to be all blurred out, but you can tell she's got this, like, look of complete bewilderment on her face. And again, to frame this was at a public event at a restaurant called the Ebb and Flow. And it was by a transgendered group called Garden of Eden. Now, I'm not showing you a whole video because there's a lot more to it. I'm just showing you a clip, but there's a lot more to it. These people, at the end of this, after this gyrating, dancing fool tried to sexualize our children, right? They gave away sex toys publicly, and they spoke publicly about sex and being transgendered and trying to convince kids to do it. The whole video is gross, but I just took out this little piece. And I want to call your notice too, just a little critical thinking, right? This group, the Garden of Eden, they're mocking God. Why are they calling themselves the Garden of Eden? And this thing that happened at this public restaurant, it was an all-ages drag brunch. That's how it was sold, right? An all-ages drag brunch. Anyway, let's get to it. Without any further ado, let's take a look at this video, and I'll talk to you about it on the other side. All right, guys. First, before we even talk much about that video, I need to publicly thank Sarah Gonzalez of Blaze TV for bringing us that video. And I want to thank the New York Post for leaving it up online. And that leads me to this, too. I found it pretty interesting. After Pride Month is over, right, in terms of searching down some of these videos, and it's amazing how many of the links are broken and the videos have been taken down. How ironic. During Pride Month, these videos are prevalent. They're everywhere, from social media to the news, and you can hear about it on the radio, and you see it virtually everywhere you look. But then as soon as, like, the trans movement exposes itself as a bunch of demonic child groomers, the videos suddenly begin to disappear. How very odd. You'd be surprised how many of these videos I went to where there's still a news story about it, and then you click on the link to watch the video, and it says, this link no longer exists, or this video is unavailable. Would you like to search for something else? It was pretty incredible. Now, there's still tons of them out there, but it's funny how this stuff just starts to disappear. So one of the things I do want to point out about this video is that I heard an awful lot of beeping, and you might have heard an awful lot of beeping. Like, you hear the music in the background, right? And you're beep, 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 beep. Well, since my podcast is basically watched by adults, I'm going to tell you about that word that they were beeping out. All right? Put your hat on. It's not a friendly word. You okay? You ready? Brace yourself. Female vaginal organ that starts with a P. The one that rests between their legs. So, you see that little girl in the video. I'm guessing maybe this is her, like, 4th birthday party, maybe. And there's other children in attendance there around her who have to suffer through this sexual display and gyrations of an adult male dressed as a female. And worse yet, the parents are laughing and they're having a great time pulling out dollars as if they were in a strip club to give to this trans man. This man dressed as a woman who obviously suffers from mental illness and is trying to trans our kids. But wait a second. I thought they weren't trying to trans the kids. I thought they weren't grooming children for sex. I mean, that's what all the nuts that were emailing me yesterday and posting on my page, I thought they weren't performing in front of children, one of them said. You can't find any evidence of that, they said. Again, folks, your eyes and your ears are not lying to you. The pride, trans, drag queens are lying to you. And they are most assuredly going after your children. Right? This next video I'm going to show you here, this is from our friends at Libs of TikTok. For those of you who don't know, they're awesome. They have a fantastic way of leaving absolutely no commentary whatsoever about the events. They just take these insane videos that the left posts and they put them where we can find them. Because let's face it, most of us normal, everyday, non-mentally ill people not engaged in that, right? We're not going to go to any of those accounts of people nor read that smut and that trash that the lunatic liberal left posts on a day-by-day basis. We're not going to do it. So I'm very grateful for our friends at Libs of TikTok who go after these videos and then put them up for people like you and me to watch so we know what's really going on the left and what these trans people are really doing. Now, this next video here is called A Family-Friendly Drag Show. And I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. Now, when you see this, look at the age of the children in the video. All right? My sarcastic side wants to say, explain to me how this is appropriate. But I'm not going to ask that really because I don't care. I really don't want anybody wasting their time trying to explain to me how these purveyors of sex justify twerking and jerking in front of our children in an effort to sexualize and normalize their behavior. So anyway, here's the video. It's only about 15 seconds, but it'll tell you everything you need to know. Fire it up, Mr. Producer. Now, guys, even though there was no sound associated with that video, you didn't need sound to see the trans man on that stage spreading his legs wide open in front of what appears to be a 3 or 4-year-old child who walked right up to the stage to your right as you're watching the screen. It's on your right. And you could see when they pan that camera out that there's children all around. And this is necessary for what reason? These parents should absolutely be brought up on charges. This is without a doubt child endangerment. And we're rational, intelligent, non-insane people in elected office right now. This would be indecent exposure in front of a minor. In absolutely no way whatever is this behavior appropriate for children. It's just not. There's no benefit for a child. There is no benefit for a child to get from watching this kind of sexualization. And it's all it's really going to serve to do is to hurt them, confuse them, and of course, begin the indoctrination process for them into this disgusting and morally reprehensible lifestyle. Now, I don't want to fall short on saying the elected officials who were, if they were sane, they would press charges against parents. What about the dancers? What about the drag queens that are performing for these children? They're every bit as dangerous as these ignorant parents are to the health and well-being of the children in attendance of these sexual displays, whether or not these are in public or private. Now, with that, I do want to say, folks, some of the videos that I did witness today, I didn't choose because they're too graphic, because some of them are actually being done in private. Now, they do these shows in private, these little birthday things for kids. And the next thing you know, there's 8 or 10 kids surrounding these dancers as they rip part of their clothes off and they're left in like G-strings and itty bitty tiny little bras with their fake hormone induced boobs. And they do some really sick stuff at private parties for kids. So obviously, you only see a few seconds in the beginning of these 3 trans men on this next video, okay? I want you to take a look at this one. And I'll see you on the other side in just a minute. All right. So there you see it. 3 trans men on stage, right? They're in what appears to be G-strings and tight tops, right? Twerking and dancing sexually. You only see them for a minute, right? But then the camera pans and you see the entire audience is comprised primarily of children and a couple parents. So once again, I put it out there, trans people who want to argue, right? Trans people got to want to argue with me and debate with me on social media. What do you mean by you're not trying to trans the kids? I'm somewhat confused, Because even though there's many videos that have been taken down from Pride Month and of other sexual events held in front of children, there's still thousands of them up. Now, I also want to address another issue that was brought to my attention, which was a ridiculous statement made from someone of these insane, crazed, mentally ill trans people that we really should be looking at, and this is what they told me, you should be really looking at straight white males because that's who's causing sexualization issues with our children. All right? Challenge accepted. Show me the videos of the straight white males twerking and jerking in front of children. Now, I read that comment yesterday, and I confess, I don't have a huge staff like some of the great big podcasters and have all these people around here doing research. I've got a few that help me do my, daily research and produce this podcast. We did put in a little effort, me and the few who do work here, and we weren't really able to find any straight white males twerking and jerking in front of school-age children, especially of the elementary age. In fact, we didn't find any straight white males twerking and jerking in front of anybody. That kind of deflection from the left and the trans and the drag queens sexualizing our kids, it's a joke. And you know what? I'm not going to waste any more of your time or my time discussing what a joke it is. Refuting the ridiculous claims has already taken up too much of both of our valuable times, right? All right, so we're going to put up another video here of another trans person in front of kids. Now, this time you don't see the kids, so I'm going to have to tell you what it's all about. And I'm going to do that on the other side of the video. Roll it, Mr. Producer. All right, shut it off. Just shut it off. Stop. That's enough. Turn that trash off. That's all I can stand. Folks, that was an elementary school graduation in Manhattan, New York. Yeah, I know. I squinted too. Elementary school graduation in Manhattan. Really? Really? That's necessary? Do any of you remember graduating from elementary school? I think when I did, the band would play and then the orchestra would come out and you might have some of the kids from the chorus, you'd have the chorus come out and they sing a song and all the parents would applaud and have a great time. And then you do the graduation ceremony and then everybody goes out to the, 8 or 10 ice cream places for dessert and has a great time with their family and sees all the other kids graduating. Can't wait you see in junior high. Now, I'm going to give credit and take it away at the same time, right? So to the credit of a lot of the parents that were in attendance, they did file formal complaints with the school board in New York, and rightfully so. But again, we're faced to ask the painful question of how this is appropriate for children. Why does it need to be shown in an elementary school graduation in front of young kids? And what are the administrators of the school doing permitting this behavior and the sexualization of the children that they're charged to protect and educate? But we know it's not really education anymore. It's indoctrination. And it's into this leftism and this sexualism and transgenderism. We know that. I'll tell you what, New York, you got exactly what you deserved when you elected a bunch of left-wing liberal lunatics, right? Couldn't get that out. Left-wing liberal lunatics. There we go. When you elected them to office, like you keep doing year after year and decade after decade, this is exactly what you deserve. And that's what I meant by take away credit from those parents. If you don't like it, why don't you start fixing it by voting in conservatives? So yes, even though I gave parents credit in the beginning, I'm taking it away. I'm glad they can complain to the school board. But my question is for those parents there, how many of you voted for that school board? How many of you voted for Eric Adams as mayor and Kathy Hochul as governor? How many of you did that? Now you can call me mean or call me inconsiderate, but the truth is what the truth is, and it just doesn't matter to me. I'm calling you out on it. You're getting exactly what you voted for. And until you change that, you're probably going to see a lot more of the same. And if my powers of prognostication serve me well, what you're going to see in the future is most likely going to be far worse than what we just showed you. I got to kind of close out this segment here because it's about all I can stand for one day in terms of dealing with the lunatic liberal lefties, the pride movement, the trans community, the drag queens, their efforts to sexualize and groom our children. And as my faithful listeners, you're well aware, this is a pet peeve of mine. I am going to keep hammering this trans movement until it's fully exposed and comes to a screeching halt. So go ahead, challenge me, transies, lefties. Go ahead, continue to make your comments. Try to sell me it's just art, it's just dance, that you're not trying to sexualize the children. And I'll go ahead and I'll keep playing the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of videos that prove you're lying, that you're wrong. Those videos that show perfectly what you're doing, that our eyes are functioning and our ears are hearing exactly how you're trying to trans our children, starting in the schools and now moving into public drag queen events for kids at restaurants and everywhere else. One other interesting thing that just happened that kind of goes along in the same vein as this is that I found it completely ironic. Isn't this ironic? How ironic that the DOJ this week just suddenly scrubs 3 child sex trafficking sections from their website, right? And this was reported by the Washington Examiner on Wednesday. Apparently, the DOJ's child sex trafficking page had, without any explanation whatsoever, just removed 3 sections. And here are those 3 sections, right? International sex trafficking of minors, domestic sex trafficking of minors, and child victims of prostitution. Poof. Disappear from the DOJ's website. How ironic. How ironic. Suddenly, with the release of the movie The Sound of Freedom, bringing massive, new, and most welcomed attention to the sex trafficking trade in an effort to uncover it and maybe solve it. How ironic. Joe Biden and his corruptocrats, including that disgusting slimeball Merrick Garland, decide to delete those sections from the DOJ website? How curious. And I think the Examiner did a pretty fair job in quoting the Heritage Foundation, too, Vice President of Domestic Policy, Roger Saravino, who called the move typical of Democrat administrations. So I'm going to put a couple of the quotes up here, right? Severino said this, right? Quote, Republican administrations direct more resources to child and human sex trafficking, and then Democratic administrations pull that back. They treat it almost as a distraction from some things they consider to be more important. Close quote. Now, I really like the response that we got from Florida State Representative Anna Paulina Luna. And she simply stated this, quote, DOJ's blatant move to distance Joe Biden's harmful policies from the global crime of sex trafficking should be no surprise to any of us who have seen the blatant sexualization and abuse of children this administration is comfortable with promoting. Close quote. Well said, Anna Paulina. Well said. So what we're really seeing here is that the DOJ is protecting Joe Biden. And they're protecting him specifically because of his open border policies. Now, in light of these open border policies, there is a direct correlation between that, the open border policies, right, and the sex trafficking of children. And of course, we could just point to the 85,000, not 100, 85,000 migrant children who crossed the southern border, were settled in temporary government shelters, and then suddenly became lost by federal officials. Now, as many of you know, the cost, meaning the financial responsibility for getting those children across the border, is earned at a time in the future as these children are sold into sex slavery markets in the United States, thereby compensating the Mexican cartels who snuck them over the border in the first place. And if you think critically about it, that would be the reason the DOJ also scrubbed that little portion about prostitution, child prostitution, because the Biden administration is well aware of these facts. So the only way to draw attention away from Biden's implication in child sex trafficking acts as a result of his open border policies is for the DOJ to scrub the issue from the books, remove it from the website, and certainly not to prosecute anyone for engagement in this illegal and disgusting activity. So you may ask, like, where is this happening? Once again, Representative Anna Paulina Luna simply states, quote, pimps and traffickers sexually exploit children through street prostitution and in adult nightclubs, illegal brothels, sex parties, motel rooms, hotel rooms, and other locations throughout the United States, end quote. She wrote quite a bit more about it, too, and you can find that on her Twitter page if you want to go look it up. And I'm proud of Anna Paulina Luna. She's doing a great job. She really is. She's doing a fantastic job for her constituents. And she's bringing the right kind of public attention to this incredible crime scheme, right? And guys, this sex trafficking of children is taking place here in the United States. It's in the good U.S. of A. Right here under our noses. And then you got Biden scrubbing three of the most important sections of child sex trafficking and child prostitution off the DOJ website because he knows he's complicit with the open borders and allowing it to happen with children. All right, let's move on to something else. Because we're running a little bit short on time, I got to get to our final story today, right? And I've got to get this through. Yesterday, right, Joe Biden decided to call up our U.S. military reserve units and deploy them to active duty in Europe, right, under Operation Atlantic Resolve. Yeah. Wouldn't have been a problem there, Joey boy, if you wouldn't have said to Putin, well, it depends how far the incursion goes into Ukraine, and totally enabled the guy to just go over the Ukrainian border. Now, to remind you guys, last Friday, a week ago today, right, we did a whole segment on our dwindling numbers in the military. And we do have a massive problem with that. We talked about how 77% of young people under the age of 24 aren't even qualified to be in the military because of the fact that they're either physically overweight, they've got mental or emotional issues, or a criminal record, including drug use and previous drug use, which disqualifies them from military service. Now, keep in mind, that's 77% of young people. It's also the ones that are interested in joining our all-volunteer military armed forces. We must also remember that there's still a huge segment of the population of young people who don't want anything to do with the military. And although there's a multitude of reasons for that, some of the big ones are one that parents don't really trust the U.S. military, and they don't trust the commander-in-chief, being Joe Biden. Now, being someone who did serve in the military, I remember when I was young and I wanted to sign up, I picked my branch of the military, big surprise, Marine Corps, right? All the Marine stuff you constantly see me wearing. And I had a discussion with my parents about it. And at that time, confess, I started looking during the Reagan administration. It was considered an absolute honor and a great decision to join the military and to serve in the armed forces of the United States. And my parents encouraged me to do it. Today, that's not the case. Even parents who had previously served, many of them don't want their children in the military because they don't trust the commander-in-chief to do what's right concerning foreign policy. And also including the never-ending wars that we've seen over the last 20, 30 years. I also think another issue is that the military is being headed up by this treasonous Mark Milley, who's more concerned with white rage, male fragility, and the transitioning of our soldiers from man to woman. Transing the soldiers. And when Mark Milley's not involved in one of those three things, he's typically on the phone with like President Xi, giving him an update on the decisions our president might make and warning him if we're going to be heading in his direction. As many of you know, that situation happened under President Trump. And to this day, I still can't believe Mark Milley has not been brought up on charges for treason. It's not like treason's some concept we've never heard of before. Article 3, Section 3 of our Constitution covers it pretty specifically. In fact, you know what? Take a second, Mr. Producer. Just put that right up on my screen for me. Thank you. You were ahead of me. How nice. I'm going to read it for you. Article 3, Section 3, United States Constitution. Quote, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of two witnesses or the same over the same overt act or on confession in open court. The Congress shall have the power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attainted. End quote. Though once again, I must confess, I'm not a lawyer, but I do think calling our enemy, getting him on the phone and giving him aid and comfort so as to inform him if our president at the time was going to take any military action that might involve China would definitely constitute treason. Yeah, I think he gave our enemies aid and comfort. Aid in confidential information and comfort in the ability to understand that confidential information and protect his country from our country. I hold no love for Mark Milley whatsoever. He is incompetent. He should not be in the Joint Chiefs. He should not be anywhere near our military people. And because of his presence, there has to be tens of thousands of American families who won't let their kids serve in the military because of Joe Biden and Mark Milley. So as we see, folks, we got this huge problem. Not enough people joining. And the all-incompetent Joe Biden now has to activate military reserves in an effort to fill the critical vacancies that are needed in Europe because of his other bad decisions in terms of foreign policy. Now, I do believe that if the military would just focus on being the military, protecting and defending the United States and its people from our enemies, and not engaging in culture issues, we wouldn't have these problems. Although I do also think it would help if we consistently had conservative presidents who adhere to the terms of the Constitution and love their country, maybe that, and instilled in its people a sense of patriotism that would well up in people and cause them to want to defend their nation from all enemies, domestic and abroad. But we don't see that right now, do we, folks? We have incompetent liberals, such as Joe Biden, who hasn't made a good foreign policy decision in the entirety of his career in Congress. And we have the pathetic sissy generals like Mark Milley, who's more interested in culture than in the military and the art of war. He doesn't care much for our Constitution or committing an act of treason. But he is certainly happy to promote and fund diversity, including on-base drag shows. Because, on-base drag shows is so critical to the defense of our nation. And, I know, he'd say something along the lines of, I'm building rapport with my troops, We're increasing their desire to serve their country by bringing in trans drag shows. Esprit de corps, right? What? This is so critical to the defense of our nation, having a good military. Not to mention, with regard to Mark Milley, I also find his faith in diversity to be contrary to the mission of the military, which is unity. Everything about the military is unity. One fighting force. One thought as a union, right? One battalion, one platoon, one fire team, one mission. All minds working together in concert to accomplish that one mission. There's no diversity of thought or everybody doing their own thing, going their own direction. Could you imagine that, right? Guys going this way, guys going that way, making their own, living their lived experience. Yes, my lived experience tells me to go that way. No, it doesn't happen that way. Everybody can't do what just feels good, and we'll see just how it washes out in the end. It's ridiculous. But that's the liberal perspective held by the idiot Mark Milley. Our strength is not in diversity. It's in unity. E pluribus unum, from many one. I also find it rather disturbing how it's so easy for this idiot, Mark Milley, I can't stand this guy, to deceive so many people in our armed forces into thinking that individuality and diversity is our strength. When the fact is that your individuality translates to your individual skills and your talents with, when combined in a spirit of unity, is precisely the formula that has helped bring our military great successes in the past and provided us with the liberty and the freedoms that we enjoy today. That's what we need in the military. Unity, right? Isn't that why we wear a uniform? We've always been one unit. Now it's diversity. Anyway, folks, in closing out our podcast today, my dear friends, I would like you to encourage, and I absolutely have to encourage you to pray for our nation. And if you're not a praying person, ask someone who you know that is a praying person to pray for our nation. We need all the prayer we can get. And even though we're posting wins on the board, and we're exposing the liberal Democrats for who they are and what they are, and we're exposing the trans agenda and the sexualization of our kids, and we're exposing the child sex trade market in the United States, as well as the drug epidemic that we have in the United States, And we're posting a lot of wins on the board. We do have to recognize that. But that doesn't mean that our job is done. So please continue to pray for our nation. Or ask a friend to pray for our nation. And if you feel so inclined, get involved at the local level or the state level and see what you can do to help save our republic. Because these liberals, they're trying to tear it down and kill it. We do have a way to go, my friends. And all is not lost. We are still a republic worth saving, and we are absolutely a people worth preserving. Okay. Well, that's our show for today, folks. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Also, please remember, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me because that really helps with us moving up in the charts and our ratings. And, of course, it helps us keep the show completely free. And make no mistake about it, my friends, this show is for you. So everything I do, the research, everything I say, it's to bring you another view, a cowboy view of our political and cultural landscape. Hitting that subscribe button helps me continue to do that. Thanks again for being here. And remember, say your prayers, love your family, and live a life of honor. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. God bless and take care.